She thinks that I'm dumb, but she likes Jujutsu Kaisen, which is funny to me because JJK's writing has been on a sharp decline as of late. I know it manages to appeal to those whose entire life revolves around how many likes their Twitter dunk can get, but when you think about the story for a few seconds, you realize there's some things missing. One of the things that alarm me is how the story treats its characters that have been marginalized. The Zenin clan subplot was one of the most important plot points in the story. It showed just how bad the conservative Jujutsu society could affect the lives that are at the bottom. All of that has been thrown to the wayside for Psukanaglaze, which got me thinking, would it have been better for the story to not even tackle misogyny and discrimination in the first place?
I be on my own, yeah. Head up in the clouds like Zeus. When they say you ain't the GOAT, I come down like who? But I got my head in the clouds like Zeus. Swear I can see the game from a bird's eye view. Hey, bitch talking to a rap god. Hey, dirty talking to a monster. Hey, you could give your whole damn life to the music thing. They gon' turn around like they don't love you.
Defund the police, an outcry from the Black Lives Matter movement in response to the injustices and brutality our race has gone through. This idea was birthed from the thinking that we can't evolve or improve conditions of a system that was built on the hatred towards those who were oppressed, in this case hatred sown through white supremacy. As the sea of blood grows thicker on the other side of the world, change becomes less of an option. Getting rid of the source seems to be the best way of getting rid of the problem, so to speak. But not everyone agrees with that. How much media do you consume that says all we need to do to combat oppression is to preach kindness and love instead of a destruction of a status quo? How many episodes of Steven Universe end with him singing a song to Nazis, convincing them to change their mind? I mean, hell, the final episode is literally called Change Your Mind. Like, for the road to One Piece, I'm visiting Magi, a totally endearing, if not a little, a story, but some of the biggest arcs so far has involved an impressed group of people rightfully lashing out for their disposition, and being told that their hatred might be valid, but isn't the answer. That their animosity is an unconscious excuse to give into darkness. And their problems, more often than not, are fixed by a magical Middle Eastern magi who enters the soul of these people to bargain with their consciousness, revealing that the reason for their angst isn't that they're just being stepped on by the government, but also they have an emotional weight on their shoulders that no one has bothered to understand. And that's fine, but for this series and a lot of others, I have to ask, doesn't this all kind of seem like a fantasy? Well, I mean, yeah, but more than that. A world like ours, dark and decrepit, but it has a Superman that can solve all of its issues. These authors grapple with cynicism only to assert that the protagonist being bright and naive is the only logical way to fix things. Why don't we remove all the magma from the earth, etc, etc. If you get that reference, I love you. There's nothing wrong with creating a world for yourself where you can escape the depravity around you. However, don't discuss that depravity in such detail if you're not ready to deal with the implications. Deku is quirkless and is fine with it. His power was more than just an avenue for murder or just an avenue for his happiness. It was a connective tissue. It connects Deku to a network that shoulders his weaknesses and exalts his strength. And this has been the idea for centuries. When Yoichi was treated as nothing but a possession by a brother who loved him, but just in the wrong ways, it was One for All that allowed him to be saved by others and live autonomously. In death, his ideals and the morality of those after him lived on, until all of their resolves were satisfied. It was a form of comfort knowing that you're not truly alone in your path of righteousness. One for All is a gift from someone important to Deku. A gift that allows him to live his dream, a selfish dream where he gets to work to be the greatest, despite being totally incapable of being the greatest on his own. One for All is also incomplete. It was born out of yearning. If All for One, the quirk, was used in the right ways, it could be a gift. But because of his inherent loneliness and greed, AFO burned the only connection that ever mattered to him. If only one day they could conjoin like the twins they once were, they could be complete. It's almost as if the purpose of One for All is to connect it with itself again. Deku losing his quirk is not the issue, it's more than that. One for All is a way for human beings to learn more about themselves through other people. If Deku learned that who he was as a person, separate from One for All, was of the same worth as him with it, only then would him losing that power be meaningful. But Now it's one self-sacrificial act to add to the pile of many others. And the reason this hurts so badly is because My Hero was once a safe haven for people who have been wronged. At its core, MHA was a comfort series, the manga that told us everything was gonna get better, but at the same time, it wasn't afraid to showcase what we needed to get better from. So, when MHA decided to stop caring about its minority characters, the quirkless child who was an allegory for disabled people, villains who were malicious because of a shoddy hero system, children at the opposite end of domestic abuse, people whose quirks made them look different, that's when MHA became a shell of itself. When it decided to start shafting or killing off characters that related to our struggles as minority figures. And for what? MHA strives for a happy ending, an ending that could put series like JJK to shame because of how authentically it healed its cast. Can we stone whoever made this image? But at a certain point, to get that blissful ending, it sacrificed the very people who deserve that ending the most. I once praised Attack on Titan for how thoroughly subjective its world building was, how there were no true villains but scared people lashing out. It turned out though that the very people lashing out had the power to euthanize and genocide an entire race, and after accepting that opportunity, Eren is thanked for his efforts by his comrades and forgiven by his lover. By the third act, a lot of shonen forget the complexities of their themes and dissolve into madness. For instance, I never really got to talk about Naruto. I loved it, and I still do. That isn't past tense, but its handling of those who have been traumatized by war left a lot to be desired by the end. The bout of two brothers wasn't only caused by the pain they thought they couldn't share with one another, it's also due to the reincarnation of their souls. This battle has been going on for centuries, they're just the newest versions of it. The cycle of hatred needed to be broken, but we didn't need the reincarnation of souls to acknowledge that. Furthermore, even if Sasunaru weren't brothers separated by fate, while Naruto learns being Hokage is less than a title and more of a duty, Sasuke ends up being sidetracked by multiple goals. The Uchiha were oppressed people, subjugated, pushed to ghettos, not even having a seat next to those who represent Konoha. Itachi exemplifies that pain, being groomed to be a child soldier for their genocidal means. It's their fault that Sasuke has to exist, and yet they're a good country, a place of peace that should be protected. And then the story says Sasuke should lead that country. That is, if his lover boy loses. If he wins, well, Sasuke should just go away and be a nomad somewhere. Because Konoha by the end isn't something that needs to be done in from scratch. It just needs a better leader. Which is fine, but you're asking me to believe Naruto can be that better leader when he can't even be a better dad? I think what makes Naruto such a beautiful story is its willingness to talk about things like generational trauma, but would the world building be better if it were just like Bleach? Having a society that's so clearly wrong and yet the story acts like it's a complete non-issue? I should be happy that Yamamoto was gone and was replaced, but a different Future is still a Future, isn't it? It gets a lot more depressing when you realize that allowing characters to destroy tradition isn't even any more satisfying. Because Maki killed her misogynistic family, Gojo killed the higher-ups. But Jujutsu Kaisen deals with these events so matter-of-factly that we're now 2 big arcs away from the Zenin massacre, and the fact that Maki's family is dead isn't even important to anyone. And who will even be alive to enjoy the fruits of Gojo's labor? I suppose the next generation will be, though I wouldn't be surprised if Sukuna wins by the end and rides the merger like a sandworm from Dune 2, while nuking the entire planet. At least we'll get the prophesied Heian arc, but something tells me that's not how you guys expected it. Frankly, it gets really exhausting seeing real-world issues treated like this. I focus on the West because admittedly that's all I know, but I am 100% sure the East goes through far greater bouts of classism, discrimination, and misogyny. And yet that sentiment is treated like a narrative tool to show how kind the MC can be, or how subversive the story is, and not an emotional issue that if treated improperly can lead to stigmatization. Thank God we have stories that deal more so with just the human condition like Hunter x Hunter or Magi. Humans suck sometimes, there isn't a real solution, it's just constant misery. But you have to make the best out of yourself and the situation that you're placed in. There! That's it! That's all you have to say. Human greed and pride is the problem. It isn't destiny. There isn't some big evil being behind all of the pain. Our world is just a consequence of souls being broken. And I want to make it clear here, both sides are treated like garbage. You think society should start over after traditions are engulfed in flames? Well, so did the League of Villains. And how many of them will be alive to tell their tale? How have they been treated as the story comes to its conclusion? Most of them are dead, and all of their deeds won't even be in history books. You're a radical who's risked their life to change the system for people on the bottom? Congrats! People won't even acknowledge what you did on screen, because I guess we have more pressing matters to attend to. Sorry Polygon, but if you thought the way JJK treated its female characters was bad, constantly fridging and mutilating them, wait until you see how they treat those dirty, rotten liberals. Could you imagine if Gege is actually a woman? Lord have mercy. Do you think society can change for the better? Great. But when all is said and done, that happy ending where kids get to grow up in a better tomorrow, 9 times out of 10 turns out to be a sham, and the cycle will just repeat into the next generation. I mean, for God's sake, people get on Black Clover, but at least it doesn't have the gall to passively mention genocide. And Kami wonders why I'm so miserable.